I've been doing this for about the last 6 months, roughly, for individual people, and I've had enough people request it that it has become a massive pain in the butt. So what we're doing is we're just going to do a basic lecture series. This is broken up into about 12 lectures. Each one is about 45 minutes. Hi, Art. That works right, just right. Thank you, brother. It's about 12 lectures. We're going to do them in a series. This is number one, and it's basically telling you what we're going to do and why we're going to do it, with just a few little hints as we go forward. But this is basically the introduction. So why am I offering this? Why are we doing this? Well, because in any given work group of 5 people, you're going to find somebody that's really good. And then we do an awful thing to them, which is we promote them. Terrible thing to do to someone. Or we give them more responsibility. We raise them up in one manner or the other. And it is a very, very bad thing to do. Because what we've done is we've taken someone who's really, really good at doing this, probably one of our rock stars on our teams, and we've given them a responsibility for something that in most cases they've never done. We're putting them in charge with no understanding of what being in charge means. And it's a sink or swim. You know, we just wave bye-bye and hope they make it. It's not a good system. And in fact, it's guaranteed to fail a good percentage of the people. Art Burt and I had this conversation at my last company where we worked together, and I actually made the suggestion, why aren't we doing basic training so this rock star doesn't fail? And the response was, well, you know, sink or swim. If they're the kind of people that can make it, they're our kind of people. That's dumb. We invest a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort in good people and in training them to be able to achieve things, just to then drop them off on the face of the earth and we think we're doing them a favor. It doesn't work that way. So I would say, by the way, as a side note, it's that way in every business. It's probably worse in BPO. We're very fast moving. Everybody here understands speed. So we see people rise quickly. We put them in charge quickly. They fail quickly. It's just not a good system. So today we're going to talk about why we do leadership more than how. How will be the next few weeks. Okay. So why do we study leadership?
Hey, Wayne, real quick. Is everybody seeing Wayne full screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. All there? Okay.
I just want to make sure everybody knew how to set him on full screen so you see him full screen. All right, cool.
Yeah, Art, you're awesome. Thanks for figuring this out. So why do we study leadership? Well, I'm going to give you a couple of examples, right? So let's talk about the neighborhood football hero. The person, when you were going to school, high school, junior high, whatever, there was a person in your neighborhood that when you were doing the local football games, like, hey, let's get around and just throw the ball around, was really, really good. They were really very talented. I suppose you had the football hero, you had the boxer, you had the artist. You always had somebody that was good at something. But they never went on. They never became professional. They never went to the high school team, the college team, much less the majors. The artist never became the architect that they could have been. The singer never went on stage. You saw people with these natural talents, but they never really worked at them. It's the same thing with leadership. You can have someone who's a born leader. They can have strength of character. They can have a magnetic personality. They can be very good at getting people to focus in one area. But if you don't study, if you don't work, if you don't train, you never get better. Skills only improve with use, period. Techniques only improve with repetition. And to be honest, strength is only done through strain. You have to work at these things to be good. And people who don't never get further than the neighborhood football, the neighborhood artist, the neighborhood singer. It's the same thing for management. Knowing how to manage a team isn't really natural. Knowing how to get together with people, it is. Knowing how to convince everybody to go get pizza perhaps is the right way to go. But knowing how to do it individually is not a normal thing. You have to work on it. Okay? By the way, it's easy to look like you're good when everything's working very well. We used to talk, Art and I, a long time ago about everybody looks like a rock star when things are easy. It's when things get busy, when things get crazy, that's when it changes. And that's when you find out who's really done the work, who's really worked on their skills. All right. So today, we're going to talk about balanced leadership. Balance is kind of the key point. There are three things that you have to manage if you're going to be a genuine leader. The first one is kind of obvious, right? It's people. The second one, a little less obvious. It's finance. And the third one is really bizarre, and it's politics. When people talk about resources, they really mean these. If you have somebody that does any one of these things, that person is a solid player. So if you've got somebody that excels, is really good, you got a solid player. If you got somebody that does two of them, you have a solid manager. If you have somebody that does three of them, you've got a leader. It is literally that simple. Every organization needs somebody that's really good at politics, really good at bringing people together, really good at getting people on board. Every organization needs somebody who's paying attention to the bottom line or who's paying attention to the team. If you get all of them, you're a leader. And you have to excel at each of them equally. That's why it's called balanced leadership. It's a three-legged stool. If you miss one, you fail. You know, the question is what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, do you want to be a doer? You all are. Every one of you already is, or you wouldn't be here in the first place. Do you want to be a manager? About half of you are. Do you want to be a leader? That's a whole different thing. And that's when you start practicing these skills for every single one of these things. So let's start talking about the obvious one, right? The obvious one is people, all right? And I'm going to teach you a term, if you haven't heard of it before, called laminar flow. I know I'm a nerd, right? Laminar flow. In any movement of water, anytime you can get the molecules of the water to move parallel to each other, you create a laminar effect. You've probably seen this at, some water parks when the water is coming from a tube and it looks like a perfect column, or you see, the bouncing water going back and forth from pool to pool to pool at one of these places. That's actually laminar flow. What it means is all of the things are perfectly aligned. And alignment is probably one of my favorite words. If you're going to get the most out of people, you have to have alignment of effort. And alignment of effort means everybody working together. This does not mean we're all on the same team, sis boom ba, but that we're all working exactly together. And I, as I often do, go for a boat. If you've ever seen rowing teams, they create basically a slightly disorganized jet, and they do it by laminar flow. So this person pulls through the water, and they start a flow. The second person pulls perfectly with them, the third, the fourth, and what they get is a perpendicular effect of waters. They create a jet right here. That's why it's so critical that they all work together. You can put someone stronger, faster, better than the rest of the team right here and lose. The trick is the laminar flow. Some people talk about the speed of trust. Some people talk about drifting in cars or drifting in jets. It's all the same thing. In the case of laminar flow, though, the combined effort of everybody pushing back this way pushes the boat forward faster than any of those people could have done, even if you had twice the number of people. But it only works if everybody's moving at exactly the same time on both sides of the board. This is why when we talk about teams, I have lots of people that are strong players. They may not be good leaders. They may actually slow a team down. What's important is that everybody pulls the same. I think half a dozen of you, I'm sure, have heard me say on multiple occasions, I don't care if you pull that strong, I don't care if you pull that hard, I care that you all pull the same direction. Very similar situation. They all have to work together to pull this off. So what happens if, just for funsies, if you've got a jet on this side, and you've got a jet on this side, and everybody's doing it just right, and the boat is shooting through, and one person starts pulling at an angle. One person on one team isn't a team player. Well, this side becomes faster than this side, and your course changes. Now, as a leader, you've got really only three things you can do. You can change the course, which is where you start planning to go this direction, knowing the pole's going to do this. You guys do that every day. This is where you say to yourself, you know, this should take about 4 weeks, but I'm going to go ahead and give it 6 because I know they're going to have trouble with this. What you're actually doing is a course correction because your team isn't working well. Or you can go to the people that are really kicking keister and slow them down. That's not a good usage of resources. It's not a good usage of time. A lot of people do that. The most common thing people do is they go to the slow side of the boat, specifically everybody else here who isn't causing trouble, and you extort them to go faster. This is when people say, you guys got to give it more. You've got to do faster. You've got to do this. You can do that. You can do that short term, just like you can add extra time short term. Just like you can tell your rock star, ease up a little bit until, you know, Jimmy catches up to you. You can do all of those things. It's a complete waste of your time, though. What happens if you start doing these things? You've got missed goals. You've got late deliveries. You've got morale issues. Eventually, you're going to have attrition. You've got to have everybody working together. This is why, and some people don't get it the first time they hear it, I can have the strongest independent contributor in the world. They can be amazing. They can do great stuff. And if I could just lock them in a room over there to do stuff on their own, they'd be fine. But in a team environment, if you got one person going outside the lines, if you got one person that doesn't know their role, that doesn't stay in their lane, and that doesn't work for the betterment of a team, they use the word I a lot. They'll actually wreck your team, even though they themselves are good, even though they do good work every day. If they're not working with the team, the best thing you need to do is start working on them to get them better. Teach them how to work better. Train them how to work better. You got to wait until the guy in the back of the boat yells stroke, row, 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 and you have to work with them. And if you can't, if there's no way around it, you've either got to put them in an independent contributor role or you got to get rid of them. There's really no middle ground. We don't only train up people who need help. Sometimes you train the strong just to work better. Sometimes you remove people who are trouble, who are bad, who basically are making your life difficult every day. Sometimes you just remove people who can't work with a team. The reason this is so successful in boating is because you could take twice this number of people and put them in oars, and that boat will leave them behind every time. It's the combined effort that makes any team achieve, right? So laminar flow, complete alignment, and achieving a team that works well is laminar flow alignment, meaning it's stronger because it works faster, because it works together. Now, I want to show you something kind of cool here. Your financials and your political skills are almost the exact same. Everything's about alignment. So financials is probably the one thing people miss most often. It's the most ill-considered. It's why when I came up with the 10 rules of how we were going to achieve 5 nines back in the day, one of them was about unnecessary expenses. People thought that was weird because it had nothing to do with uptime. Well, it doesn't. But finance is part of your role as a leader. And this is why. One, the PMI, Project Management Institute, PMBOK, PMBOK, which is the Project Management Book of Knowledge, states explicitly that any budget that you have, use, or work toward has to be accurate. One of the questions on their PMI PMP test was, is it better to be 5% over budget or 5% under budget? And it's one of those gotcha questions that they throw in to try to basically flunk you out. They're both equally bad, over and under. From a financial perspective, you want accurate budgets, no sandbags. We do not allow people to say it's going to take $30,000 and it only takes 10. Look, I saved you 20,000. Very funny. Not a good idea. I'll tell you why. Because every expense you have and everything you spend is planned, and it's planned ahead of time. Since planning matters, The fact that you saved 20 grand here and only spent 10 of the 30 I set aside, I'm not happy with you. I could have taken that 20 and given it to Jamie Bean. I could have taken the 5 and given it to Art Bird and planned for it, had the purchasing done and had it working. Instead, because someone sandbagged, I'm in trouble. Goes the same way the other direction. If I don't have enough money because I under budgeted, something's not going to work at all. But either way, it's a problematic. And one thing people don't understand is that planning matters. 1, 2, expenses require discipline. And finally, 3, spend it. No one ever gets this, but it's the difference between somebody that becomes a vice president and somebody who doesn't. If I convince Don Northworthy to put aside $10 million for me to build a thing, and I don't spend it, I'm actually in quite a bit of trouble. 1, that money was supposed to go into a particular budget for a capital expense for improvement of my network. Well, I've got a worse network. 2, they had to go to the board and ask for that money and get that approved. And now I don't spend it, he loses credibility. The next time he comes up and says he needs $10 million, they go, do you really? We'll give you 5. So spending it is just as important as saving it. At the end of the day, the key word there is accurate. And this is being aligned with finance. My favorite word, alignment. So do your homework, do it right, and then do exactly what you say you're going to do. This is part of leadership. Next up, the one that no one thinks about in terms of a positive, and that is political. But it is one of the 3 things that you have to manage to. Politics just means alignment with strategy. It just means goodwill. It means policy. It means planning. It means doing all the things right. The first thing it means is understanding the direction. And the truth of the matter is, my handwriting's awful, learn to love me. The truth of the matter is, understanding the direction changes every time you get promoted. The higher up you go, the more different it looks. If I'm on a cost-cutting spree, if I'm on a building spree, if I'm on a hiring spree, or I'm reorganizing the departments or whatever it is that we have to do at any given moment, I'm doing it because that's a strategic direction. I have to understand the direction. It's why I meet with those guys pretty regular basis, because it changes pretty regularly. Now you have a set business plan, but things change pretty quickly, especially in BPO. So we have to sometimes turn on a dime. Some of you heard, we're going to launch a ridiculous number of sites this year. But it's part of our strategic direction to answer a couple of mega deals and get them. Amazon, purely a strategic direction for us. They want me to open 3,000 seats. We're launching 2 more centers. That's just how it goes. Understanding that direction, it's not my job to come back and say, guys, I don't think we should do that. I can ask, do we have the resources to do it? Do we understand it's going to cost this instead of that? But I don't walk back there and say no. I have to align myself to that direction, and then I align the team to the direction. This is pure politics. What happens when you do this is the interesting question. If you support the strategy, and there's a lot of people that don't, and they don't last very long, if you support the strategy, you generate goodwill. There's a specific meaning to this. I'm going to explain what it means. The more you're seen as supporting the strategy, the more you're seen as pulling for the team, everybody all together, the more you're going to hear yes than no. I'm about to go and say, I need these number of resources to launch these sites. I wouldn't have that credibility if I wasn't supporting the strategy. When I go to Northworthy, when I go to Kirksey, when I say I've got to make these changes, they're going to say yes. I'm going to hear yes a lot more often than I hear no, because they know the directions I'm making, or I'm taking, forgive me, the directions I'm taking, the things I'm doing are absolutely in support of their strategic direction. They don't even question it. And that's literally because I've built enough goodwill by following the strategy of the company. Now, to that same token, not only do you hear yes, you do something I call establishing the net. The net is important. When we were having the outages, when we were failing back in the day, because we had the 55, 85, and a few other things that went down, we ran into quite a few technical problems, if you remember. We immediately started getting notifications from clients that said, "You're fired, we're leaving." I begged some of these clients to stay. So did they. We all did. We worked really hard to fix it. When I was given an opportunity to leave spoken, I think we all remember that conversation. We were, were we going to do the contract? Were we not going to do the contract? I vociferously argued against it because what I said was, we don't have the net. All right. Goodwill is a net underneath you while you're on a high wire rack. I mean, that is literally your safety. The goodwill of your customers is a net while you're on the high line. If we had made this change after all those failures, they would have had no patience with me. We wouldn't have gotten a second chance. If we had completely moved those ACD platforms, the fact that there would have been outages in my mind, then and now, was guaranteed. The chance was 100% we were going to have outages. But after a 30-hour outage, there was no appetite on our client's behalf. We had no goodwill underneath us. Our uptime since has built a lot of goodwill. We've had a couple of outages since. Not as bad as the 30 hours, but we've had them. Every single time it happened, we talked to our clients. When we fell, and oh boy, howdy, we got caught by their goodwill and they let us climb up and take another chance. It's the same thing with politics in your environment. The more you help, the more you focus toward the strategic, the more value you add toward the strategic, the more of a net you have underneath you. So if you make a mistake, you're not necessarily out of a job. Your projects aren't necessarily canceled. Your funding isn't necessarily taken. You build up goodwill internally, just like you do externally. And it also gives you the opportunity to have an impact. We're about to launch some sites in some places we've never been, with clients we've never had. If you look at some of the deals going on with Amazon right now, Michael Nelson's done an extraordinary job with Amazon. They see us as strategic now. You look at some of the conversations we're having with T-Mobile and that we're going to be having with AT&T, we've changed a lot. We're seen as something strategic. That's extraordinary. We're building a net. If something goes wrong, we're going to be okay. Executing to a strategic plan is pure politics, and it's pure laminar flow. It absolutely is. If you don't have these three things, you don't have a career, you have a job. So when you're managing your team, when you're managing your finances, and when you're managing to the strategy of the company, and that's just politics, you're setting yourself up to be a leader. Now, over the next 12 sessions, we're going to go through some detail on how to do these things. This is just an overview of what we're going to be talking about. We're also going to go through some reading lists. You don't have to read all of them. I do insist that everybody reads the 1 Minute Manager. It is a very basic book that teaches you how to do the most basic aspects of management. And even people who had a lot of experience managing often read that book and walk away going, hadn't quite looked at it that way. Thing is this thing, not going to take you very long. The other two books that were on the reading list, and I've got a list here somewhere of the books. It may have been, actually it was on the original introduction. The other two books that are in the first section of 4 are, they're just funny. One is about, it isn't about talent. Another one is about insane bosses. The one where it isn't all about talent, I'd kind of suggest you read that too. Again, you can have the strongest people in the world, but if they aren't pulling with you, the team's not going to succeed. You need people that work together more than you need anything else. All right. So the first 4 from here are going to be about the basics of management and how you do it. That's really what we're going to focus on. The next 4 are going to be more difficult management techniques, how to handle disagreements, how to handle people that, emotionally or perhaps overinvested, and, how you can manage people away from the edge to keep them from hurting the team. And then the last section is going to be strictly about, well, frankly, strategic. How to look long term, what we're going to do long term. So it's 1, 2, 3. Now, want to turn this over. Does anybody have any questions about what we talked about today? Don't be shy, by the way. I don't get my feelings hurt easily.
My only question, Wayne, is about the budget. So Don Norsworthy says, you've got 30 grand for this one project. In the course of that project, I don't know, somebody takes Mary Kay for lunch and she decides that she can, or we find a way to reduce the cost of that. Would we not still want to do so, and then would the extra money go somewhere else, or do we just say no?
If you can, through being clever, find the legitimate cost savings, that's okay. Bring that to me. I'll put it into the emergency bucket. The truth of the matter is this: in any organization, there's an emergency bucket. I may schedule. I think I built out $36 million worth of budgets last year. This year, going to be significantly more if we actually launch all the sites that I was talking about. But otherwise, we're talking about 30. We're trying to be cheap. So let's use the 30 number just for fun. If I set up $30 million to be spent, I have to spend, roughly the money put aside for me. If I find a way to cut a cost through being clever, through getting additional value, that's fine. I'll put that in my old crap bucket, because I have one, I promise you. Because cost overruns occur. Generally, PMI would say plus or minus 10%, right? Which is actually pretty large. That's a 20% variance possible. I think the truth is it's 5% either side. So plus or minus 5% is probably what United States business will really put up with. So yeah, there's going to be an opportunity to save, 15,000 out of 30, 5,000 out of 20, whatever the case may be. And it all goes in this bucket over here. Because as we discovered last time with Oracle, it was going to be this and it became that. We had a $400,000 Avtex. They came back with 475. My friend Art Burt beat them down, but it was still more than last year, wasn't it? So I expect individually on tiny little projects for you guys to find 10,000 here, 10,000 there, because on the other side, I've got some that are going to be 10,000 more, 10,000 more. What you can't have is Star Trek estimation. Does anybody remember Captain Kirk and Scotty and all that jazz? Scotty, I need this fixed. It'll take me 2 weeks, Captain. You've got 3 days. And he does it, right? That's what you can't have. If you know something's going to cost 30,000, you can't tell me 50 and then be able to say, look, I saved 20 grand. You have to be accurate. If you're clever, that's okay. I'll put it there because I assure you something's going to go bad on the other side. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. What other questions do you have? Be open, be bold, be brave. I don't care. Anything? All right. Seeing none, next week we're going to get into my infamous top 10 lists, because every time we talk about something, I give the top 8 or top 10 or top 12, whatever. Take notes, because I'm not sending them out, because I think people don't study and they don't learn. We do that. If in any way possible, have the 1 Minute Manager read, because we're going to talk about it. One a month. There's really only 3 required books. The rest are just fun. The 1 Minute Manager, the Emotional Intelligence Quick Book, Leadership and Self-Deception. Those are probably the 3 most important you could read. All the rest of them are just cool, but I'm going to do a basic walkthrough of them anyway, so if you don't want to spend the money, it's okay. No big deal. I'll go ahead and end early then. We will see you guys next week, and we will go through our top 10 on coming up next week. Self-driven management. So that's all about what it takes to be the one that people call a good boss. So we'll talk to you then. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, sir. Later, everybody.